very special evening in which we go beyond Machu Picchu and hear much more about Peru's other treasures. So make yourself comfortable if you're joining. And yes, do say hello in the chat room. It's always good to know who's joining us this evening and where you are. But yes, really good evening planned. Tonight we're going to be transported to the cultural heritage and majestic landscapes of northern Peru. We're going to hear all about the emergence of civilization in the Andean area and some of the cultural delights that you can find in this South American nation, which of course is such a favourite, we know, with the Wanderlust readers. And it has been on all our wish lists, I think, since Wanderlust first launched 30 years ago. And I'm sure that even if you have been before, you're going to learn something more this evening. So make yourself comfortable. And lots of people already in the chat box. Oh, somebody said they're in sunny Wales. Is it really sunny? It's dark and wet here in Windsor. Yeah, Rosemary's in a very wet Dorset. Hello, Howard from New York City. It's always good to have an international contingent. And hello to Denise coming in from Mallorca. Hello to Justin in Bath. And we've also got Stephen and Elizabeth in Bath. Jules in Somerset. Zainab from Camberley. And yes, William in Bonnie, Scotland. Matthew says he's currently in Lima, so looking forward to hearing more. You'll be hearing, so you're going to be very inspired tonight. And to Marianne in Sweden, Anne in West Yorkshire, Colin in Singapore. Now you're just showing off there. Martin's in rain-lashed Bidston. And Dennis in New York City. Patricia in Phoenix, Arizona. Vivian in Hungary. Welcome. So Sarah's in a very rainy and cold Kent. Jackie in Burnham, not far from me at all. And Daria says hello from a Polish girl in London. Carolina in London. Katie's in British Columbia. So our great speakers tonight, Ricardo and Gallo, we're very international here. So yeah, Jane's from a very wet Hertfordshire. And yes, the weather's pretty awful here. So yeah, make yourselves comfortable. I don't know if anybody's got a pisco sour to hand, but it feels like we need one this evening. It's probably a bit early for you, Ulla, to have a pisco sour in hand, isn't it? Because of course it's only midday in Lima. Right, so and we've also got Mary in a rainy Dublin. Rebecca in Manchester. Okay, terrific. Well, I think it's probably time to kick off and just say a bit more about this evening. So we're being joined by Ricardo Romero, who is the new director of the Trade Commission of Peru for the UK and Ireland. So welcome, Ricardo. And where are you actually from in Peru?
I'm from Lima.
And you're from Lima as well. Ah, yes. Such a cool city these days, and I think so many people now, and of course known for its gastronomy as well as many other things. And we also welcome tonight Ulla Holmquist Pachas is joining us live from Lima, where she's director of the extraordinary Museo Larco in Lima. So we're looking forward to that. And Ulla is actually previously Peru's Minister of Culture. So our real go-to person for all things cultural in Peru. And Ulla's directed the development of the electronic catalogue of the Museo Larco since 2001, making the entire collection of 45,000 historic objects available online. So which is incredible. And so Ulla's going to be our main speaker tonight, and really, really looking forward to it. And as ever, if you do have questions, then do put them either in the chat box or the Q&A box. We're also joined in the chat box this evening by Andreas from Peru, from POM Peru. And so he'll be able to answer some of your questions in the chat box, but he'll also join us at the end of the session for any general questions as well. And we've also got Laura from Wanderlust in the chat box as well. So do put your questions in there, and then we'll obviously put those to Andreas and to Ulla at the end of Ulla's talk. But we'll also, Andreas in particular may well answer some of them as we go along as well. Now, as ever, anybody who's been on the Wanderlust session before will know that we also do a follow-up email. So with a link to this evening's recording, and also, again, answering some of those questions. So if you do have to leave a few minutes before the end, then don't worry. We will be sending out a follow-up. You will be able to rewatch the session or whatever. So that's all good. And yes, looks like we've just had a few more people come on. So welcome all. So as I say, we're going to, this evening, we're going to start in a couple of minutes with a short welcome and talk from Ricardo, who's the director here in London. And then the main event we'll be hearing from Ulla. So really looking forward to this. And right, I think we should probably start. So, Ricardo, you're going to speak first. So, yeah.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much for the introduction. Again, my name is Ricardo Romero. I am the director of the Office of From Peru in London, which is the official tourist board of Peru in the United Kingdom. But before I start the presentation, I would like to thank Lynn and Wanderlust for the opportunity to partner with them to present a bit more about Peru, a fascinating and diverse country with incredibly rich culture and history. I will try to take just a few minutes as an introduction on Peru, and then I will leave you with Ulla Holmquist, director of the Museo Larco, who is someone with a vast knowledge of Peruvian Asian history. And for us, it is, in fact, a privilege to have her here with us. Now, without further ado, let me please begin by saying that Peru possesses a fairly large territory, in fact, 1.2 million square kilometers, approximately comparable to the size of France, Spain, and the United Kingdom combined. The territory is also mega diverse, as it has a vast coastal area on the west, a mountainous area in the center and south, and a deep rainforest in the east. The country can be divided into different specific areas and ecosystems due to the large internal diversity. Peru is, in fact, one of the most diverse countries in the world, with 84 of the 170 life zones. Peru is a multicultural country with distinct festivals and traditions in different parts of its territory. You may have heard about the Inti Raymi Festival, which takes place in Cusco, celebrated on the 24th of June in Cusco, in honor of the sun god, the Inti. The celebration includes religious ceremonies, traditional dances, and a reenactment of the Inca procession. But there are several other unique festivals throughout its territory. Some examples include the Feast of the Virgin of the Candelaria, which takes place in Puno in February and is one of the largest festivals in Peru, known for its elaborate parades of folk dances, colorful customs, and vibrant music. The Marinera Festival, held in Trujillo in January focuses on the marinera dance, a traditional Peruvian dance known for its elegance and style, which includes marinera competitions and parades with luxurious costumes and intricate dance moves. The Carnival of Cajamarca is another and most important and colorful celebrations in Cajamarca, typically celebrated in February. During this celebration, the city comes alive with music, dances, parades, and festive activities. One of the most notable aspects of the carnival is the famous yunza, a tree adorned with gifts that people try to bring down while dancing around it. Finally, the Holy Week in Ayacucho is a religious and culturally significant celebration in the city of Ayacucho. It takes place during the Holy Week, leading up to Easter. During this time, Ayacucho hosts religious and cultural events that attract numerous visitors from Peru and other parts of the world. There are fascinating experiences and activities you can do in Peru. There is certainly something for everyone, from the most adventurous to those that love to enjoy the wonders of amazing cuisine. As Lynn mentioned at the beginning of the introduction of this presentation, just some examples of what can be done include adventurous activities, paragliding in Lima or sunboarding in Huacachina, because yes, Peru is also home of the Pacific Desert, one of the largest deserts in the world. Nature activities include Amazon River cruises, some of them considered to be among the best in the world in the river cruise category. Bird watching, which has gained a lot of momentum in recent years. In fact, Peru is one of the countries with the largest diversity of birds in the world, some of them endemic to Peru, such as the marvelous spatule tail, which you can see there in the presentation. In northern Peru, for instance, is the only place on the planet where you can find these fantastic species of birds. Other rare species found in Peru include the Andean cock of the rock, the Andean condor, Amazonian macaws, among many others. Culture. Peru is rich in historical heritage, which have made it one of the most important countries for architectural and archaeological sites. Examples of that include the Lima Center, with its colonial architecture, and of course, numerous architectural sites such as El Brujo in Trujillo. Ulla will expand on this later. And we can certainly do not forget about gastronomy. Lima, Peru's capital, is considered to be one of the gastronomical capitals of Latin America. The latest edition of the famed 50 Best Restaurants places 3 Peruvian restaurants amongst the top, including Central as number 1, Maido as number 6, and Coye as 28. This gastronomic boom in Peru means that one can have delicious and unique food, whether you are looking for a complete fine dining experience or street food. Of course, this picture speaks for itself. Everyone knows Machu Picchu, which is one of the 7 wonders of the world, located in Cusco, has become a bucket list of destinations for people all around the world. Now, are you ready to visit Peru? Please allow me to show you a short video that you will enjoy very much. Okay, well, thank you. Well, definitely you want Peru now. And after this presentation, I'm sure you will be more than excited to explore more of Peru and the wonders that Peru has to offer. Now, I would like to thank you for your time and for your, your desire to explore Peru and for taking the time to be with us this evening or this morning, depending on where you are in the world. But please, if you need any information, please don't hesitate to contact us. We're more than happy to help you out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricardo. And I could hear you. I wish you were talking for another hour as well. I mean, good grief, so much in there. I thought you summed it up so well. Wonderful to hear about all those different festivals. I feel like we could have a webinar on those alone. But just very quickly, what's your favorite area in Peru outside of Lima?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Well,
before you disappear off, sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, my favorite, that's a good question. I mean, there's many beautiful places that you can visit in Peru. Of course, everyone wants to go to Machu Picchu. Everyone connects with, when talking about Peru, with Machu Picchu. But for instance, for me, I love to go to the south. I love to go to Paracas. And I think I mentioned Huacachina, where you can do sun boarding, which is an amazing experience. You can go to the north, you can go to Trujillo. There is a lot of many places you can visit Peru. But I would say, and in fact, I'm from Lima. And one of the great things I just came back from Lima 10 days ago. And every time I go to Lima, I find new restaurants. It's amazing, the food. I invite everyone to, when looking to Peru, to explore Peruvian cuisine, because more and more we have visitors that like to stay 2 or 3 days, additional days, just to try the food. I think you'll have an amazing experience.
That's a really good point, actually, because, yeah, sometimes people on arrival are too quick to get out exploring, aren't they? But actually, as you pointed out, Lima is just so well known for its food now, so many amazing restaurants. So that alone gives a reason to spend more time in Lima itself. But no, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that, Ricardo. I know you have to leave now. But that was really enticing and really got us in the mood for what's to follow. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to welcome back Ulla now, and of the Museo Larco. And yes, welcome Ulla, and really looking forward to this.
Yes,
so
I'm here already. My camera is on. Yes.
Yes, you're ready. So I'm going to leave you to it. Right.
Thank you very much. Thank you to ProPeru. Thank you to the Ambassador Ricardo Romero. And thank you very much to Wanderlust and the invitation to be able to share some more information and images and discussions in relation to our cultural development. What I will do right now is to go with you through a trip to another region that maybe you have not necessarily recognized as one of the most important areas in Peru, but I will try to tell you how much information and resources and experiences we can also get from visiting Peru beyond Machu Picchu. Of course, as has been already said, we all know in this international audience, I'm pretty sure that we know that since the conquest, what was talked about in relation to Peru was the empire of the Incas. No, and that has been probably the information, the historical information, the knowledge about this part of the world for a lot of centuries. And in relation to this, of course, one of the most emblematic places that is kind of a synthesis of the imperial strength and growth of the empire of the Incas is the well-known marvel, modern marvel of Machu Picchu. However, I will have to go through this slide. I'm sorry, but this should be like a PowerPoint, but I think it's not working because it has to go one image after the other. I don't know how to do it through this. I'm sorry. I will skip this and I will focus on this. Okay, for 4 centuries, only the Incas were known, but throughout 4 centuries, the information about the depth of our ancient history was not known until the development of scientific archaeology. And when this happened, we got to know that the Central Andean region was one of these cradles of civilization. That actually is the only cradle of civilization in the southern hemisphere. And that's quite important because this has to do with this part of the world and the characteristics of this part of the world. What I'm showing now is the geopolitical map of Peru, but basically concentrated on 2 of the most important traits, geographical traits that characterize this area of the world that is absolutely diverse. Why? We are in a tropical region, but we are characterized by a very cold sea. And that has to do with the cold current of the Humboldt current, the Peruvian current that comes from the south. And that makes us have probably the richest sea of the world. And in combination with the Andean chain, with the mountain chain of the Andes, gives us a very, very big geographical diversity, an ecological diversity. And our geography then is marked by this altitudinal diversity. We have a very rich littoral, as I already mentioned, these very high mountains that are also different in our northern Peru and in southern Peru. We have inter-Andean valleys, and we, of course, also have the eastern slopes of the Andes that go to the Amazon basin. And we do have this kind of landscapes. This is the desertic coast. We have very rich beaches because the fishing and the obtention of seafood was probably one of the earliest activities of the populations of the bands of hunter-gatherers or foragers that arrived to our territory very early, 14,000 years ago at least. And in the Andean chain of the Andes, very close to the coast, even though it's a very arid area, even though it almost never rains, we have this formation that's called the lomas, no? These areas in the dry mountain that blooms 2 or 3 months a year because of the humidity of the environment, not because of the rains, but of the humidity in winter time, specifically in the time where the rivers do not have water because it rains in the highlands in summer. So while we have water in the rivers in summer, and we do not have water in the rivers in the winter in the coast, we do have the lomas blooming with life. We also have dry forests like the algarrobo forests that are very, very common in the south and in the north, and that even though they're dry, they hold an animal life that is very important for the continuation of this forest. We also have the valleys that come from the mountains, that of course carry water from the mountain peaks, that are the snowy peaks from very high in the Andes, the flowing of the water in different shapes and strengths. And we have these high altitude mountains at 6,000 meters above sea level, 5,000 meters above sea level, where probably we would think that nobody and no life would have been possible. But anyhow, the human populations that arrived to our territory got to learn how to adapt and to use the resources and to go through these areas, to move a lot around our territory and to get to know it and to get to know how to complement, to use resources from all these parts of the central Andean territory. Lagoon areas were also very important because, of course, not only because of the water, but of course of the life that would be blooming around. We also have the Amazon region that holds a whole other different of species, plants, trees, animals, both terrestrial and also in the rivers, and that we usually don't think that these populations, these people that lived in this area had communication with the coastal and the highland people, but they did. This was something that happened throughout 14,000 years in Peru. Now, I want to focus in a specific region, which is the northern coast of Peru. Why? Because the archaeological evidence has been showing in the last century that we're really dealing with a very early emergence of very developed communities that learn how to live together, how to take advantage of the variety of resources that they had available. And of course, they develop a way of life that today we identify as a civilization. No? We are going to talk a little bit about this northern tradition throughout these 14,000 years, more or less. I'm going to focus on a site that developed in the Chicama Valley, which is a river that runs in the today region of La Libertad. Okay, we have north from Lima, the region of Ancash, then La Libertad, Lambayeque, Piura, and Tumbes. You don't have to learn the names, but all these regions are the regions to the north of Lima. And then we have Ecuador. No, that's in Tumbes. We have the frontier with the other country, with our brother country of Ecuador. Now, in Chicama, there's a place where archaeological record is showing that the people that lived around the low valley and next to the littoral, they learned how to use this very big diversity of animals, of species that were available in the beaches. No, like all this seafood that I'm just showing some images, but there are hundreds of different foods, or fish. The availability of fish for fishermen is huge in this area of Peru. Not only small fish, but also they learn how to hunt and to hunt, for example, sharks, and also mammals, sea mammals like the sea lion. That was really important for a lot of the things that they had to do. No, and however, even though this would account for a big availability of food permanently, of course, one of the issues would be to have access permanently to fresh water. No, and this made the people move because, as I mentioned before, the availability of fresh water was not permanent. So if you wanted to have it, you had to move up in the mountain. You had to learn to access these other resources and move seasonally. This seasonally movement is what probably gave the people the knowledge to begin experimenting with agriculture, early agriculture, no, what we call horticulture, what we in other parts of the world, I'm pretty sure that all my friends in England and in Europe in general, we talk about the Neolithic process, no? And this is more or less what was happening also in Peru around the 10th and 6th millennia or 5th millennia before present. And the first evidences of people making low effort agriculture, let's say, allowed us to find beans, squash, some fruit trees also, like avocado that we love. We all love avocados, paltas we call them, and also to hunt small mammals in the areas in which these animals live, like in the lomas, for example, no? So the archaeological record of a site like Huaca Prieta that is placed in this Chicama River shows this huge diversity of resources of people using them around 12,000 years before present, 10,000 years before present. And this mound that you're looking at is the result of people getting together. They don't live there permanently. They're moving around, but at some point they need to get together. What for is the question. And the answer has to do with one characteristic of our ancient history and ancient cultures. People got together all the time, not only to share the products, to exchange them probably, but to get together in a sanctuary of the earth, to a place to which they wanted to thank for what the place was giving them. This availability of food, this possibility to have the fresh water of the rivers coming at some point of the year, to have the availability of the resources around the wetlands. And they got together and they make big rituals of consumption. So today we love food. And I know a lot of people want to come to Peru because our food is really good. And this has a long, long history. This long history has to do with the meaning food sharing has in our ancient cultures. The evidence in this mound, for example, is that people got together to share, the food that they were cooking and to share the way they cooked it especially. And at some point, they began building some residents, not for living permanently, but for making these offerings and to bury their dead. So I already mentioned two important characteristics of our ancient, very, very ancient cultures: getting together to share, rituals of consumption, and an emergence of the cult of the dead. Because the dead were not considered that there was something finished, but they were going back to the inner world from where life was always present, no? The ocean was considered the world of life, basically the most sacred element, because it was always offering people resources and food, and also the water, of course, as the element that allows for life in general. So burying their dead was like making them go back to this inner world as if it was the mother uterus. And in this very early archaeological site, we find the beginning of manufacturing that were in some times very, very special. Basketry, of course, is one of the handicrafts that is one of the oldest in human in humanity, but we have very special elements made in weaving. Cotton domestication was very early in Peru, and we find evidences here in Huaca Prieta in the Chicama Valley that not only show a very early development of the domestication of cotton, but early techniques of weaving and of dyeing the threads with very special colors. As we all know, the blue color is one of the most difficult colors to obtain, and it is usually related to the sacred, to royalty, and things like this. Even though at these times we do not have identified leadership as to say that there were kings or queens or lords or whatever, we have evidences of a development of a cosmovision that was already talking about a cult to sacred sites, to the forces of nature, and so forth. Textiles with some initial images of what is going to be the iconography of sacred animals that were related to the different worlds. In this case, we have a condor in a very, very little textile that is 6,000 years old, with a worm that could also be a snake in its belly. These two animals, let's say the bird and the snakes, are going to be present in our iconography for these 10,000 years of art development in Peru. The birds related to the upper world, and the snakes or worms or reptiles related to the inner world. Also, gourds have been found with iconography that relates to the sacred. In this case, we have heads, and I'm going to mention head representation in a little while, but you can see that in these early gourds, they are already carved with these faces. Also, faces of felines are going to be present since very early, okay? Now, if we jump a little bit on time in the northern coast, we're going to begin to see the construction of very early monumental sites at some point, because all this knowledge of the resources, the different resources that people had, all these cosmovision related to the importance of the water sources, the ocean, the rivers, the mountain peaks, the snowy peaks, all this circulatory system of waters that allow for people to live, is going to be transferred in a way to places in which people got together again, and they began developing a monumental architecture to be able to get together to perform rituals that were probably related to this understanding of the territory and the power of these natural elements. We have a period that we call the archaic period. Pottery is not developed yet, but even though there was no pottery, we have these monumental sites. I'm going to show several of them, most of which are places that you can visit today when you come to Peru. Aspero, for example, in the region of Lima, that goes back to 5,000 years. You have also, this is the kind of structure that we have. We have these huge courtyards that are sunken plazas that for years archaeologists were asking themselves, what are they for? And today, we, even though there are no leaders, there's no tombs yet of special persons, but they are these huge monuments, buildings that were probably meant to be for astronomical observation and also for the performance of communitary rituals. This is the characteristic of these early sites. One of the most emblematic places of this period is Caral, that is very special because there is no evidence of further construction above it. There are other places that were built in these times, and then other buildings were built upon them. So the pre-ceramic building is very, very deep in the archaeological record, and you see later periods above. But in Caral, we can see basically how this construction was made 4,500 years ago. It is very close to Lima, okay? And the kind of objects that are found in this place are a lot of objects that were used for rituals, for making music, like these little flutes made of the bones of pelicans, or figurines that are not ceramic yet. They're just terracotta. And even though they're terracotta, they are painted, they are decorated. They are these kind of figurines that we usually find in other archaeological contexts in the world related to fertility, for example. No? And we know that in Caral, people got together bringing their dry fish from the coast, sharing and exchanging with the farmers that were producing gourds and cotton, for example, and also accessing resources from the other part of the mountain, even in the Amazon basin, because they were getting fruits or some kind of leaves that maybe the shamans of this period were also using for their rituals. Other places very similar to this are very close to the littoral, like Las Faldas in Ancash, or up in the mountain, very north, almost getting very close to Ecuador, this place of Monte Grande. These kind of spiral constructions are always telling us about movement of people, performance of rituals, also evidences of fire, ceremonies, and so forth. So this is what is going on in the northern region of Peru around 5,000 years before present. They're also decorating these mounds made of adobes, even with mural paintings. These polychrome paintings go back 4,500 years back, and they represent, for example, in this case, in the Lambayeque region, the hunt of the deer. The deer is there on the back of a net, and this is a topic that's going to be present through millennia in ancient Peru, because the deer is going to be considered one of these offerings, one of the lives that has to be offered in order for life to continue, because it's the big felines, the force of the jaguar and the puma that takes the life of the deer. And the felines, the big felines of our Amazon, of our Andean Amazon territory, are going to be considered the animals of the strength of this world. So we also have in the Amazon region this temple like Otosh with this symbol of the cross hands. All of these places are visitable today in Peru. And we arrived to more or less the year 3000 before present, to a period that archaeologists, we tend to put a lot of different names to cultures and to periods, but not to get you confused, this is what would be the period of the formation of these first communities that are sharing probably a religion, but people getting together around specific temples. And this is what we call the formative period. And already people were making pottery. So pottery making was introduced in the central Andean region around 1800 or 1500 before Christ, or 3,500 years ago, more or less. I'm going to show some of the expressions of this formative period. The cosmovision is already kind of developed in a way. There's an early religion that we can recognize with mythological personages that have the traits of the sacred animals. They have fangs like the felines, sometimes they have wings like the birds, or they have elements, appendixes, like if they were reptiles. Sometimes they have human traits, sometimes they're just hybrid animals. Spiders are also part of this iconography, early iconography, because of the weaving of the spider, and the making of the net is going to be a very, very important symbol in all our pre-Columbian culture. The net as a material, as an object that can allow for fishing, getting food, or hunting the animals, as in the activity that we call the chaco, which is to get the animals reunited for making the hunting easier. But also, it is what the spider makes to get its victim, but also it protects it. So it's closely related to making the shroud for the dead. There's no important ancestral body in the Andes that is not covered by a shroud, by a funerary mantle, let's say. So it is this symbolism that's going to be present since these very early times. I'm going to show you some images of early temples in the north that are going to have a very developed artwork in stone, in mural painting, and of course also in the offerings that were taken to the temple by the people from the surrounding to ask for the forces of nature, water especially, to be present for them, for them to be able to live in this diverse but also very challenging territory. These are the kind of stonework that we find in the temples of the formative period. They usually show personages that, as I was telling you, traits of snakes, feline, birds. They usually hold heads. The head taking is something that is going to be present in the early religions of Peru. Not because the people were always taking heads of others. No, that's not the case. It is part of their mythology, a mythological conception of the head as the most important part of the body that doesn't really belong to this world. The head as the most transcendent part of the body. There's a conception of the individual that is not like in the modern and Western view of an individual. It's like we are composed of parts that all of them have their own agency. So the heads are the part of the body that does not belong to this earth. It is what belongs to the gods in a way. So there's a whole mythology about decapitation and head taking, for example. Okay, and we have these images of heads of felines, humans, as I was telling you, with fangs, with snakes, all over the place. In the several temples of the formative period, we usually find these traits. I'm showing this special piece because it is at the Larco Museum, first of all. I know it very well, but it is also an image of a female goddess. She has the vagina dentata, and this is also showing that since very early, they also have in the mythology the important images of female goddesses. In this case, she is also related to the weaving. She has this flow coming out from the mouth, and she's in a position that recalls the spider position. Felines, as I was telling you, are also part of the temple, not decoration, but presentation, ethnography. No, these kind of heads are also made in mud brick, not only in stone, they're also modeled in adobe. These are the kinds of temples, this is the kind of temples in the formative period with a lot of resins and areas for cult. And also from this formative period, we have the earliest astronomic observatory, solar observatory, that goes back to 2,300 years before present, in which the 13 towers that allow for the tying of the sun in solstices, in the extremes, and in the center, in the equinoxes, is in the area of Ancash, and it's called Chanquillo. it is has been already declared Patrimony of Humanity, Chanquillo. It's an important place for us also in Peru. And one of the best known places of these times is the Temple of Chavín de Huántar, because it was one of the earliest to be studied by important archaeologists in Peru. But not only because of that, also because it presents one of the most impressive architectures and a lot of stonework that is showing that the people from the different communities from the surroundings are not only going to make offerings, but also to make the artwork that is going to be presented in the different galleries or in the different plazas or in the different areas for rituals, for community rituals, like this object that is called el lanzón, the big knife that is placed in the middle of subterranean galleries, and that shows this kind of God that is going to receive the pilgrims in this place of the temple, but it has an opening on the head, so probably water or maybe blood was also offered to this deity that has fangs, as you can see, that has snakes that you can see, and that is also presenting the symbolism of the weaving of a rope that goes from up of the monolith to the earth. It's connected to the earth also. So not only that, we have the Stela de Raimondi. It's another very well-known object that comes from the Chavín temple with this deity of the batons, which is an important composition of mythological beings in all our pre-Columbian history. Not that there is only one personage with batons, but it's the way people in the Andes represented power and also leadership. And it's usually related to the connection of the three worlds. And this power is given by this possibility to be connecting the upper world, this world, and the underworld. Again, you can see the personage with claws like birds of prey, with fangs like felines, and with a lot of appendixes that look like snakes. Other monoliths have this intricate iconography that I could give a conference on just this monolith, and we're not going to do it right now, but it is really a myth in this only stonework that talks about the emergence of life connected to the caimans and the fertility and the birth of different plants and animals. So you can see how elaborate the cosmovision of these early temples was presenting. People were probably gathering there to obtain information of the cycles of nature, of the astronomers that were probably the ones that were living there, and to take this information in order to continue improving their production and their combination of strategies. Because we're not talking about people that are only making agriculture. They are developing agriculture. They are learning how to control the waters from the rivers. They are learning how to make reservoirs, but they're also still being foragers because they need to combine seasonally with other activities like fishing or gathering in the lomas and so forth. This is, again, a head, which is one characteristic artwork that we have in Peru that we call the tenon heads. And again, a female image with a hair of snakes that holds two elements in the hands, which are two mollusks that are very important in our cosmovision. The shell of the strombus shell that is going to be considered a sacred trumpet because it is gathered in the seas and it is talking with the voice of the ocean. And people use this conch to make the calling of the communities to get together to clean the canals, for example. So they are linked, the water of the ocean is linked to the irrigation system also. and we call them pututos. These are the sacred trumpets. Not only they made them to use, but they also represented together with the spondylus shell, which is a shell related to the warm waters of Ecuador. This is a kind of pottery that they begin developing. You can see that it looks like stone, but they are really making these superb pieces that look very modern in a way, very abstract, very cubist, as to say, and they were containers because they were not using this for eating or drinking in daily life. They were using this to probably contain water, but to keep it in the tombs of the priests, the priestesses, the leaders of this period. I'm going to show you some other images of pottery making of this period, this mother breastfeeding a child, and also stonework for beautiful adornment of the special personage of this period. Metallurgy was already developed, and they began making also crowns or other ornaments that, again, you can see are showing this personage of batons as a symbol of power. And also crowns with a symbolism of the heads inside nets. So even though it looks as they are very, very diverse topics, we in the Andes can recognize some mythological topics that are going to be present throughout time. Some other gold work, these are ear pendants. And we arrived to one of the periods that I like very much because it is a little bit better known because of the findings that have been happening in Peru throughout the last 30 years. We are still in the northern coast, but we're going to talk a little bit about the Moche culture or Mochica culture. You can find both in the bibliography. All of these names that are there on the map, you don't have to learn them, but it's just for me to tell you that there are several Moche sites that have been excavated in various projects, national, multinational, binational projects throughout the last 30 years. And some of the most important are, for example, the excavations at Zipan, where very, very important tombs of leaders have been found. They are usually constructions of adobes, not fired bricks, just adobe bricks. And because of the rains that come every now and then, and the pass of time, of course, this is the way these constructions look today, as if they were, you know, melted mounds, but they were huge platforms that were including places for rituals and also burials. And one of the most emblematic sites is Huaca de la Luna in the Trujillo area in the valley of Moche that has this platform over platform over platform, this facade that shows iconography that is really, really impressive. A very similar place, this is the kind of polychrome friezes that the Moche site of Huaca de la Luna shows. Altars, specific altars for offerings or even sometimes sacrifices that were performed in these sites. Or these rooms that are called the Peruvian Capilla Sixtina or Sixtine Chapel, like if it was this room full of friezes with a lot of information of myths and personas performing a lot of activities. This is a reconstruction of how the frontal facade of Huaca de la Luna might have looked in the times. This is another look of how the altars might have looked with all this iconography, again, of the personage of the batons present. We have been looking at this composition of power and sacredness already throughout 2,000 years at this time, no? And very colorful friezes and areas for offerings. A twin site, very similar site, 60 kilometers away from Huaca de la Luna is Huacacao. Huacacao also has these platforms, these friezes. These are reconstructions of how the friezes might have looked. Again, the personage holding elements on the hands. In this case, they hold a knife and a head. The decapitation mythology is present in this site also. The spider iconography is still present at this time. We're talking more or less of 1500 years ago already. And these places have also areas for very important burials. In this case of Huacacao, the most important burial that gave birth to this monument was the burial of a female leader, probably a she shaman that was related to the taking care of the bodies to enter to the world of the dead, because all the iconography around her, the Dama de Cao is called, was related to healing and of taking care of caring of the bodies. This is the kind of presence next to the burial of this very important personage, very colorful with the images of this female personage, like in a position of giving birth, which is very interesting, and also this mythological being. And this is a reconstruction of how this area might have looked. Also, in Huacacao, we have these friezes with all this very interesting mythological iconography of the entrance to the world of the dead, which is the world of the ocean, basically. And this is the kind of friezes. You can see how intricate, how delicate it is. I have shown architecture, but we cannot see the magnificence of this development if we don't go through pottery, because the Moche people were the ones to develop the finest ceramics of ancient Americas. And we are looking at some of the objects that were presenting the myths and rituals that the Moche culture developed as a means of, as their religious expression, basically, no? And we have here the same kind of vessels, the same kind of ceramic objects that we saw 2,000 years ago in the formative period, the same kind of spout and handle, but with this very complex iconography, as if we were talking about their narrative. It is a narrative art in which we can recognize different personages performing different rituals, interacting among them, dancing, reading elements of nature like the beings, because they were like oracles. So all of this information we obtain from the reading, quote unquote, of the iconography of the Moche people that made this pottery around 1500 years ago. For example, we have this image on one of the vessels in which we have one ray personage to the left, another personage with this kind of octopus helmet on its head. They are interacting in a ritual that is the presentation of the goblet of the blood of the sacrificial victim that is in the center. We know that these sacrifices were not performed all the time, but around the year 600 AD, when there was a big Niño phenomenon, and when another people from the highlands were expanding, we know that the Moche people performed a massive sacrificial act. So probably as to offer their blood in order to ask for balance, or it was an exercise of a massive violent event that probably had also its effects on the populations that were getting together, and at some point they kind of moved apart. And this was, in a way, a change of the cultural map of the northern coast at this point. This is the kind of tombs that were related to the sites that I just mentioned, the bodies of important personages dressed in gold with very fine textiles This is the Lord of Zipan and the old Lord of Zipan, two bodies found in the Zipan site with huge amounts of objects of gold and copper and gold and silver and rich textiles and conch ornaments and so forth. And also sacrificial victims next to them. This is how the tombs were found. Some images that have gone through the media for years that show how complex the burials were. They were called, the Lord of Zipan was called like the Tutankhamun of the Americas at some point. Also burials of female personages, very important ones. I had the chance when I was finishing my archaeological studies to excavate this tomb to the left. It was very important because we got to understand also how female power was also part of the social organization of the Moche people. This is a kind of mask, funerary mask, because the burials were so complex. The coffins were covered with objects, with masks and hands and legs, as if the coffin became the sacred body itself, no? Similar to what we would see in Egypt in a way. You know, we're talking about these societies that place a lot of effort in preparing the bodies of their leaders because they were going to be ancestral bodies to which the cult was going to continue to be performed around them. No, this kind of mask with conch, and of course the metallurgy, the goldsmiths making these nose ornaments. These are from the Dama de Cao with an iconography very closely related to the entrance to the world of the dead, to the seas. No, we have this kind of fish that's called a catfish, or we also have fish itself or pelicans. We have the iconography of the personage, the decapitation, the head, and these kind of twins that are also going to be present in the iconography of the northern coast. There's a whole myth about two twins. Interestingly enough, we know that major civilizations usually have in their mythology this myth of twins, no? Gilgamesh and its twin, Romul and Remo. We have Moises and its twin. We have usually this mythology of two masculine figures that are going to be related to the agricultural world and the other one to the water world, kind of. This also happens in the Moche religion. No? We have more ornaments in gold, nose ornaments with turquoise, gold and silver as this dual and this complementation of materials that talk about not only the sun and the moon, but also day and night, male and female, the two kind of shining colors that you can see in the water. In the day, the water turns gold. In the night, with the shine of the moon or the stars, you can see the silvering color. So almost all of the things that we are looking at have an importance as dressing the bodies of the ancestors as if they were holding the power to, of relating to the circle or the circulatory system of the waters that allowed for life in the Andes. Ear ornaments that were very big, again, the iconography of the net present, or in this case, with a lot of materials, turquoise, chrysocolla, lapis lazuli, nacre, spondylus shell, very big ear ornaments that showed how the leaders had access to all these materials that came from faraway places, no? Again, turquoise, nacre, gold, or these crowns. They are actually not all the round around the head, but they are like frontal elements with this kind of arch shape with sacred animals or high mythological animals to the side, with the face of the feline that we have seen all the time. But also we have pottery that is kind of more synthetic. In this case, this pottery, this vessel shows a spiral shape as the cycles of nature. Some of them talk about the relation with the upper world, with the coming of the rains, rituals under the celestial vault. We have also images of what people do on Earth, gathering of sea snails. We have a representation of the world of the dead, which are not really dead. These are people, quote unquote, these are bodies that are still alive in the inner world. That's how the Andean cosmovision viewed the world of the dead. We also have very synthetic vessels in which duality is expressed in this very modern and synthetic way. No? If you pour the water in, the water is going to flow through a peak of two colors, but then it's going to divert, and finally it's going to go into a container that is dual, but one in itself. No? So all these kind of concepts are present in the Moche people. This kind of pottery with a lot of marks on the faces of the priests that are related to their mythology. Very, very good portrait heads, representation of their mythological beings in different interactions with other mythological beings. Plants also that have a meaning for them, of course, like corn, also a mythological corn, or the way they represented their sacred places, their sacred monuments, their temples, also in funerary vessels. They're all made in clay. They are like 30 centimeters high, 25 centimeters high, with a very, very fine elaborate manufacturing, no? Potatoes, ducks, shrimp, the way they represent faces is superb. They're dead interacting with the living, no? Playing of music, the drum, flute playing, also birth, how women are interrelated in the birth of a new life, or sexual activity also related to the circulation of life, mythological beings taking their dead to the world of the seas, other techniques like making inlay of mother of pearl on the pottery, the painting of their mythology with very fine line technique. And I would be able to read one of these for an hour. So as I was telling you, I want to show you how elaborate there is. I think there's an exhibition next year coming in relation to all these picture worlds of the Moche. So this is going to be, of course, better known in a few months. But this is the kind of information that today we already have about the Moche that can be shared to the world. No, you can see just one vessel with a lot of information of a whole myth of a female personage of a moon goddess that's going to make a trip around the ocean and to make an offering. All of this is just narrated in one piece. No, this is very little. This is 15 centimeters, the diameter of this vessel, but you have all this information told in just one vessel. What happened with the Moche? If they were so developed, what happened, as I was telling you, was that around the year 600, there was a Niño event. Probably this had an effect on the production. This also had floodings that affected the canals. And also the people from the highlands called the Wari had an impact on the Moche people from the northern coast. The Wari people were bringing another kind of organization. You can see that even though they are different, they still have some similarities, like, for example, the power person as holding buttons. But if we would read the iconography, we can see that there are slight differences on the calendar organization, in the importance of some celestial bodies, probably more important the sun than the moon, which was very important in the coast. So these kind of differences, of course, are part of how different the cultures or the societies are. And What happened after the impact of the Wari presence in the north is that, again, two different states developed in the northern coast, one called Lambayeque and the other called Chimu, that maybe it's better known. But both of them have superb evidences of the complexity of these societies. We are already talking about kingdoms. Even in the case of the Chimu, we could be talking about a coastal empire. In the case of Batangrande, what you see there in the picture is a mound built with adobes, this huge, and there are several ones in this forest called El Bosque de Pomac, which is a dry forest of Algarrobo, where we have mounds after mounds after mounds. Why so many mounds? Because they were kind of palaces, mausoleums for their kings. And we have other place called Tucume, also from the Lambayeque culture. This is the way they buried their dead. They had very intricate funerary rituals in which the body of the king was turned upside down as if it was being born again, with a lot of gold, with a lot of companions, I have to say, and with these kind of crowns and masks full of gold and of nacre and emeralds that were obtained from Colombia. So they had long distance relations also, these kings of the Lambayeque kingdom. And this is the kind of pottery that they developed, almost all of it dedicated to their ancestor. This image at the center is the ancestor. There's even a myth related to the Nailamp ancestor that was also recovered by the chroniclers in the 16th and 17th centuries. Again, the ancestor surrounded by women. All the iconography is related to the ancestral cult. Even the vases of gold were also related to the face of the ancestor. These are upside down vases meant to share the chicha with them. No. Also, there are evidences of female queens, of queens of this society, like the Dama de Chornancap, that had this kind of crown, golden crown that shows a moon goddess, weaver moon goddess. So all the iconography that we have seen of 3,000 years back, still present in this kind of art. Also, silver work, superb silver work with this intricate iconography that shows different personas related to agriculture and a woman that is giving birth to a water canal. No, so the relation of the woman with giving birth, life again. No, all of this is present in the objects of this Lambayeque culture. We could really see one of these silver vases. The iconography is this complex. No, there are almost all the gods of the Lambayeque culture in this vessel, represented all of them, and a very complex ritual of burial also represented on the lower register of this silver vase. I'm going to jump a little bit because I'm running out of time. I have to go to the Chimu in the last 3 minutes. Next to the Lambayeque kingdom, the Chimu kingdom developed, the same northern region. They were neighbors, but at some point, the Chimu empire expanded and it enlarged as to the green area that we can see on the left map. I'm showing this because the Inca Empire conquered the Chimu Empire. And this is a very important time for the Incas to build the empire. The Incas wouldn't have become an empire if they had not conquered the Chimu. The Chimu were their important people to conquer, really, because they had a long tradition of state development, of power, powerful leaders, and so forth. You can see the two maps. One is of Peru with the Chimu extension. The other one is the extension of the Inca Empire in South America. Okay, going back to the Chimu, this is the kind of architecture, the main architecture construction of the Chimus, which is called Chan Chan. the largest mud brick city of the Americas. It is not platform over platform. In this case, the Chimu people built a huge citadel with different, actually a whole place with different citadels, I have to say. And each citadel was a palace and an elite residence, and also became the mausoleum for each Chimu king. So when he died, the family continued to live there, and they built another one. And that's how this city grew, the Chan Chan archaeological site. That is one of the preferred sites to visit when you also come to Peru. And this is the kind of iconography that you can see on the walls of Chan Chan. Actually, it's like if it was a whole net. No, again, we have traveled through several millennia in the North Coast, and still the net symbol is present in the Chan Chan citadel in the North Coast around 600 years before present. The Chan Chan site has given out evidences of burials of very important people. This is the kind of textiles woven for the bodies of the ancestors. This is the kind of ritual objects, gourds and wood carved and with mother of pearl inlay, representing felines, representing mythological narrations. And this is the kind of pottery of the Chimu. Since they were a large empire, they concentrated the funerary production basically in black pottery. Also, the black pottery was related to the world of the dead. So they concentrated on making black pottery a lot. So they could also distribute it among provincial leaders, with which they kept this interdependence. No, this is Chimu pottery. I love this piece because it's a whistling vessel, so you can pour water in, and when you move it, it makes a sound. But it's interesting because the ancestral figure is represented on the left, but there's a whole modeled scene of people getting together to share chicha, to dance, and to play music. But the ancestor is the big figure there. So it's a cult of the dead again. And one of the practices of the Chimu that later on the Incas kept was to take out the body of the ancestor from the tomb, from the burial, to preside the ritual, because he was not dead. He was there. He was present. And now we can understand why, after the Spanish conquest, it was so important for the Spanish conquerors to burn the mummies, because the mummies were still alive in a way. They were still holding power. No? And that's a practice that was not invented by the Incas. It was something that was already present in the previous cultures. Silver work of the Chimu, nose ornaments, ear ornaments, crowns of silver. They place a lot of importance in gold, in silver, excuse me. But the most important personage, like the emperors, they already used, they of course used a lot of gold. This is probably this is the only golden attire of a Chimu emperor. Luckily, we hold it at the Larco Museum, and it's really one of the most important sets of objects that we can present, because it's unique and it really expresses this power of leadership in the North Coast even before Inca times. So now we can say that we are really in a diverse territory, that all these rituals that we still have today in our Peruvian life, like sharing food, had a long history. The practices of making these superb objects in pottery, weaving, in stone, have a long history. And the way we still celebrate, the way we still get together, the way we still perform dances and music and rituals, religious rituals, has a long history. And we are lucky to still hold it. and to show it in different places in Peru, like the Larco Museum that I invite you to visit when you come, or you come back to Peru again if you have already visited. And I thank you for your attention, and I hope we all know that there's much more Peru beyond Machu Picchu.
Thank you, Ulla. Oh gosh, there was so much there to take in. And welcome, Andreas. Thank you for joining us. And I know I see you've been busy in the chat box. So we'll get onto some of those questions in a minute. But yes, gosh, we covered so much ground there. And I loved the way that, you know, for instance, earlier we were talking about this whole modern day, we consider food culture in Lima. Lima's become known around the world now for its food. And yeah, absolutely right, Ulla. You've shown us that actually that food culture goes back, all the way back, doesn't it? So I mean, I feel like again, you know, that needs almost a whole session on its own. And sorry, can I just ask you a question? Because you obviously were talking as well about the way that death is considered, and of course it isn't really death. It's going to be Day of the Dead in 2 weeks' time? Not even that. Is Day of the Dead celebrated in Peru? It is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's very in the popular culture. Probably when you come to Lima, and it's the capital city, and we are kind of very westernized, but even though the metropolitan area of Lima is little in relation to what the region of Lima is really, and we have a lot of districts that are very highly populated and where cemeteries are, you could perfectly see how massive the presence of even urban people is to cemeteries, and families going there, taking food to spend the whole day at the cemeteries. Now, if you go to other regions that are not that, there are capital cities also, but if you go not to the urban area, but you go to small villages and so forth, the Day of the Dead is a huge celebration. And it's also, it's syncretic, no? But definitely inside of this practice is also the fact that it belongs to the moment in which the waters are going to get started, the rains are going to get started. So the dead are the ones responsible for the waters to come back. That's their function. That's what they have to do, actually. And that's present in this millenary cosmovision in Peru.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I just learned so much this evening, including that now. So wonderful. Okay, Andreas, so you've been busy answering questions, but let's just go through a couple of them. Now, for instance, somebody asked about a suggestion for combining culture and nature. Because obviously a lot of people want that. So yeah, what sort of areas should we be thinking about if we want to do both? And Ulla, I don't know then if you'll have anything to add to that.
Yes, I was actually answering some of those questions in the chat, and one of the classical recommendations when you want to combine that is to actually do the traditional circuit on the south of Peru. So you can combine either Cusco with Puno and Arequipa, because you can have much of the cultural bucket list destinations just as Machu Picchu, but you can also go and explore nature in Colca Valley, and and even if you want to explore a bit more, you can do an extension into Puerto Maldonado, which is not far away from Cusco. So one of the places that we recommend when you want to do a little bit of everything and still touch the landmarks of Peru is to do the south. Now, if you want to be more adventurous, I mean, and as Ulla presented in like deep content, I mean, you can definitely go to the north, and you will have some interesting circuits there, especially if you want to do bird watching, because there are certain species that you can only find in northern Peru, and some of the tour guides have developed very specific routes through the north of Peru that crosses from the coastal areas to the rainforest. And so you can explore a very, very wide area of different species of birds in those areas. And you can touch on some of the most important and iconic cultural sites, as we mentioned before, the Brujo, but also like the Moche and the Machu culture as well, right? So, I mean, we can recommend as a new thing doing the north to explore perhaps a bit more of Peru. But if you want to do the classical stuff, there's certainly plenty in the south for nature and as well as for culture.
Oh, okay. Sounds terrific. Ulla, obviously, yeah, you were covering a lot of the northern sites. I mean, it certainly made me want to go and visit so many of them. Is it easy, though, to travel around and to access them? I mean, what's it like when you're there? I mean, are there local guides, for instance, as well, to show you around?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, but I think that one of the easiest places to travel to in Peru is because to the North Coast, because a lot of these places are very close to the highway. I mean, it's accessible. It's easy to travel also by car. I do it all the time. Of course, I'm Peruvian. I know all these places, but it's an easy trip, and the timing can also be good because you can combine 2 or 3 sites in one day and eat marvelous in the north. Really, it's one of the best cuisines, I think. And you can also have time for relaxing because the beaches are beautiful. So you can really. Oh yeah. I mean, you have beautiful places with different kind of beaches, also with little, como se dicen, caletas, little closed beaches, or also open beaches for the surfers, whatever. It is an easy place to travel. But on the other hand, there's good information because there are several museums. So not only to go to the sites, but there are probably the North Coast is the best place to go to visit site museums or regional museums that have been developed by the archaeological projects themselves, and they present very good information. So you will have a high level academic also visit.
Okay, good. And while I've still got you as well, what kind of material, this is Vivian asking, what kind of materials and substances were used for the mural paintings, especially for bright colours? Oh, you've gone mute. Sorry, Ulla, I think you've muted yourself.
Sorry. Yeah, different materials, mostly mineral pigments that were used with different, ¿cómo se dice? I forgot the word to adhere, no? But they're basically ferrous elements, no? Limonite, hematite, different soil or earth colors that were mixed with materials to adhere, but they were basically made by carving the mound of adobes and then painting with this white slip and then beginning to make the coloring. No, we have both in friezes and also in mural painting. Luckily, the way these monuments were made was that the ancient peoples buried their own temples to build again, and they buried them to build again, to enlarge the mounds. So in a way, they were also protected by these several constructions. That's why we can find still murals or friezes with these very bright colors still now.
Okay, that's amazing. Excellent. Thank you. So, Andreas, I'm trying to find the question. Jules was asking about the train. Where are we? Just Lima. But it sounds like it's not ready yet. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about this?
Yes, actually, yeah. It's a train between Lima and Huancayo, which actually at the moment there is an official date for the reopening of it, but we'll be following that closely. And of course, as Mr. Romero mentioned at the beginning, you can send us an email and in the near future so that we can have more information to tell you about that. But at the moment, there is not an official date for it.
Well, I think if you tell us about the trade when it reopens, I'm sure we can do a news story about that on Wanderlust, because I think there'll be a lot of interest in that.
For sure.
Yeah, no, definitely do. Somebody asked about vegetarian food as well. I'm vegetarian, and I know you. I mean, I actually have eaten well, but obviously it's easier in places like Cusco, obviously, and Lima. But yeah, do you think it is changing there? Because people did always consider Peru as being rather, meat and fish focused. Yeah.
Yes, that was a bit my answer there as well. Most of the traditional dishes will include some sort of meat-based food like fish or meat or chicken. But it is true that it's changing, especially in the bigger cities and the most touristic cities as well. So Lima, Cusco, as you mentioned, there are now some alternatives that are flourishing for vegetarians. And I think that will continue to be the case, especially if you go to some of the most modern type of restaurants, those that do some fusion, they will start showing up some more variety for vegetarians. Of course, traditional food will include some of the fish and meat, but I think that this is a phenomenon that will also have a presence in Peru.
Absolutely, and I think one can certainly manage. There's so many good potatoes and avocados and really good vegetables, corn. So there is
a lot of potential for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think, because I'm very, very conscious of the time, and I know we have gone over, and obviously it was so fascinating. So just to remind everybody that we will be sending out a follow-up email, and that will have a link to the recording, but we'll also put some of these questions and answers on it and any useful links. So Andres, presumably your website, the actual Peru tourism website, is a good source of info.
Yes, for sure. Please, everyone, if they want to know more about Peru, visit peru.travel, and it's actually a very friendly website, so you can choose the type of experiences that you want to do, and they'll give you some list of recommendation. You can divide it by regions as well, so it's very, very friendly. But if you can't find the information there, we're always here to help. So send us an email to info@promperu.uk as well, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, well, we'll include those in the follow-up email. And obviously, Ulla, we'll put some information in there about you and about the museum. You should do a series of videos if you haven't already. I feel like you need to be doing something.
We
have
do.
you?
We do have. I mean, we do have. Please just type on www.museolarco.org and you look for mini series, and we have 52 mini videos that speak about all of what I just mentioned, and they last like 3 or 4 minutes. So you have for a lot of hours of viewing short videos whenever you can. It's like mini series of the Larco Museum, and it's on the web, all available. And you can see them in YouTube with the subtitles also. So and 2 of these series are already translated to English. So go ahead, you will enjoy them, I hope.
Oh, good. Oh, well, we'll make sure again that we put a link in the follow-up email then. Right. Well, I mean, I wish we could carry on, but I know, like I say, we have gone very much over. So I think all I've got to say is thank you so much. Thank you, Andreas, for coming on and joining us, and also for being in the chat box answering all those questions. And thank you so much to you, Ulla, for an absolutely fascinating presentation. And thank you to everybody who watched this evening. Lovely having you here. And yes, look out for that follow-up email. Okay, thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you very much to you, Elaine.
Bye.